Ty had been friendly with Sam and Irish for about 2 days before being kicked out of the group and going back to being on the outs. He had a target on him again. And that evening, after dinner, Sam made it clear that the situation was not going to persist for weeks, as it had with Mike. While we were waiting to lock up, he leaned in close and told me that Ty was going to get hit the next morning. That the only reason he hadn't been hit that night is because Filthy needed some time to make up a peace. I'd been friends with Ty since we were young, 13. Whenever he was homeless, I'd given him a place to stay. The idea of him being stabbed, bleeding on the concrete, it was a lot to wrap my head around, and I guess it showed in my face. Because Sam stopped, looked at me, and said, "So he's your friend? You don't want him to get stabbed in the morning, is that what you want to say?" I thought quickly, but I only had one answer. I told Sam, yeah, I don't know what happened between you and him, but I don't think he needs to get hit. It's apparently the answer Sam was looking for. He told me he doesn't need to get hit. All you need to do to protect your friend is, I've got a kite. I was going to send it with Filthy to go back to the hole. I need to get it handed off to Irish whenever he gets back there. But if tomorrow morning you come out of your cell and walk up on your friend and give him a serious soft check, just beat the shit out of him and get him off my yard and get you back to the hole with this kite, we'll call it good enough. He doesn't need to get stabbed. I don't give a fuck. I just need this kite back to the hole and I need him off my yard. At this point, the cop was already walking down the tier. I had no time to respond. I thought for a second. Sam turned around and called over his shoulder, "Holler down the tier, let me know what you're doing tomorrow." He locked up. Tony and I locked up as well, and it occurred to me that I was relieved that I had a cellie that I trusted. I didn't think that he would want to see me hurt, that he would hang me out to dry. He'd done 4 terms. He knew a lot about prison politics, and I broke down the situation to him that I had to find some way to get Ty out of there without him getting hurt. I didn't care if I had to go SNY. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to get hurt myself, and I didn't want either of us to go to the hole or the infirmary. Tony helped me come up with a plan. At breakfast, I would walk up to Ty with the appearance of preparing to assault him. I would speak to him for a moment, inform him of the situation, and hopefully the two of us would be able to walk to a neutral area where there were correctional officers and make it away from the other inmates before they realized what was happening. If we explained the situation to them, they'd place us into protective custody and nobody had to be hurt. I yelled down to Sam, let him know that I'd see him tomorrow morning and I'd be ready. I figured that would be enough to make clear that I was agreeing to his terms, but not with the intent of hurting Ty, with the intent of finding some way of the both of us getting out of there without anybody getting hurt. The next morning, I woke up early, heart thumping, adrenaline pumping. I made sure that my shoes were tied right, that I was ready. The night before, I'd just been praying that maybe the officer was going to come by after lights out and tell me that my bus to the next prison was there, that I was out of there and this wasn't my problem anymore. When that didn't happen, I'd resolved that there was a real possibility that that next morning might be my last morning, might be Ty's last morning. As the officer was doing security check, first thing in the morning before breakfast to make sure that all of the inmates were still in their cells, I heard him going up and down the tier. He stopped somewhere near the end of the first tier. It was around Ty's cell. I know this because I could just barely hear Ty talking to the officer, trying to get his attention. I couldn't hear what was said, but I watched and waited until about 5 minutes later, 2 more officers and a sergeant walked out onto the tier, let Ty out of his cell, put him in handcuffs, and did the walk of shame. The walk of shame was the euphemism for whenever an inmate rolled up. He would walk along the tier, escorted by a number of officers as they yelled, "Escort!" and took him away from anybody who might be able to hurt him. My problem, my situation, had resolved itself, and I couldn't believe it. That morning was breakfast as usual, and the only concern that I had hanging was the small possibility that Tony might decide to tell Sam that I'd been thinking about rolling up. I didn't think that was likely at all, and I thought I was going to be okay. I ate breakfast, and it tasted better and more stress-free than anything had in a long time, and I would have skipped back to my cell if I could. I didn't have to hurt anybody, I wasn't going to get hurt, and as I was waiting to lock up, I looked down the tier, and I saw Sam shooting me a dirty look. At that moment, I realized that it was possible he would think I had informed Ty he needed to roll up. My problems weren't over yet. You know, loyalty's a funny thing. How much do you owe somebody that's your friend, that you care about, that's done things for you and been loyal for you? Ty and I had been friends for years, and he'd looked out for me in 100 different ways over that time. But Ty had betrayed me. Whenever he was questioned by the police regarding the murder of Donald Perez, he'd told them that I had been involved, which was simply untrue. He later tried to mitigate his betrayal. He contacted the newspapers and indicated that he was lying. He suggested that he'd be willing to sign a deposition to that effect. But it was too late. The damage was done. And then whenever he arrived at San Quentin, again, whenever it was a choice between him and me, he chose him quickly. He appeared to be just fine with whatever happened to me. I don't think that I owe somebody like that loyalty of any kind. But in the final analysis, it's not about loyalty. It's about right and wrong. I knew that day that it was wrong for Ty to be stabbed, to be hurt because of what he'd done. And I know today that it's wrong that he's sitting in his cell and will continue to sit in his cell for the rest of his life for a murder he didn't commit. There's no justice in that. It's been 20 years and he's still locked up. I suppose I was trying to help him in San Quentin, and I suppose I'm still trying to help him today. His name is Ty Brew, and he is serving a sentence of life in prison for a murder. He didn't commit the murder of Donald Perez. I'll just keep talking about this, and maybe someday I will be able to help him.